Good day all. In this video, we are going to discuss about two important concepts of database management system, cursor and procedure. Myself Shanthi, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science, Sri Krishna Swami College for Women. So, let's see the introduction of cursor. Cursor is a temporary work area created in the system memory. So whenever an SQL statement is executed, it is a pointer to this context area. Oracle creates this memory area for processing an SQL statement, which contains the output of the data manipulation statements or the information needed for processing this statement. So the PL SQL control the context area through the cursor. A cursor can hold the rows returned by an SQL statement. The cursor contains the information on a select statement and the rows of data accessed by it. The set of rows the cursor holds is referred to as active set. You can name the cursor so that it would be referred to in a program to fetch and process the rows returned by the SQL statement one at a time. The cursor can be broadly classified into two types. One is implicit cursor, another one is explicit cursor. First one is implicit cursor. So there are two types of cursor. Implicit cursors defined automatically by Oracle for all SQL data manipulation statement, that is insert, update, delete and merge. And for select statement that returns only one value, and implicit cursors will be implemented. They are automatically implemented and invoked. Whereas explicit cursors are declared and defined by the programmers for queries that return more than one rows. You can use explicit cursor to name a context area and to access its stored data. So we can see them one by one. Implicit cursor. So any given PL/SQL block issues an implicit cursor whenever an SQL statement is executed. Cursors are automatically invoked when an DML statement is executed. All update and delete statements have cursor that identify the set of rows that will be affected by the operation. The most recently opened cursor is also called as SQL percentage symbol cursor. So the implicit cursors as the SQL cursor, which always has four important attributes, that is found, is open, not found and row count. It has also additional attributes, bulk row count and bulk exceptions, designed for use for the for all statement. So an SQL cursor attributes will be accessed as SQL percentage attribute name. So this table illustrates how the attributes are used and how the results are displayed. For example, found attribute. So it will be represented with the cursor name followed by percentage symbol and found. It will return true value if it fetches statements written at least one row, or else it will return false. Percentage not found attribute of implicit cursor returns true if fetch statement does not return a row, else it will return false. Whereas the row count attribute returns a numeric value that is the number of rows fetched by the cursor. And last attribute is open. It will return true if the cursor is already opened in the program. Else it will return false value. That it means if the cursor is not opened in the program. Let's see an example of implicit cursor. So we are having a table employee in which we are having 5 columns. So first one is the employee ID, then second one is the name of the employee, then third one is the age and address and salary of the employees. Now we are creating an implicit cursor which will update the salary of all the employees by decreasing the salary by 1000 rupees. So we will try to update the table by decreasing the salary of each person, each employee by 1000. So here the declaration part, we declare total numbers as a numeric data type. We are using the update statement. So whenever a data manipulation statement is used, and temporary area which will be created. So here update employee set salary equal to salary minus 1000. If SQL percentage not found, we are using the not found attribute, then there will be no customer selected. Else we are trying to count the total number of rows we are updating. So the DBMS output line, so customer, number of customers selected. This is the role of this example. Now we will see the output of this example. Here the output statement defines the statement is processed and 6 customers selected. We are not using any conditions here. So the total number of records in this table, that is the employee table, will be automatically updated and the salary will be reduced by 1000 for all the employees. So we are not using any conditions here. So all the employees' salary will be deducted by 1000 rupees. So that will be updated here. You can compare the previous outputs and the after executing the implement cursor, the outputs. Now we move on to the next concept, explicit cursor. So the explicit cursors are defined by the programmers. We have to follow certain syntax to define the explicit cursor. An explicit cursor is a programmer defined cursor that is created when we are executing a select statement which is returning more than one rows. Even though cursors store several records simultaneously, only one record can be processed, which is referred as current row. This cursor is defined for gaining extra control over the context area, that is the output area. So the cursor, now how the cursor is, explicit cursors will be defined. The syntax for defining an explicit cursor. The word cursor, cursor name is select statement. So you have to use cursor, the word cursor as the keyword and is as the keyword. We have to give a cursor name and select statement. For example, cursor, employee cursor is select employee name from the employee. So this is the way we have to define an explicit cursor. So now the common statements used while defining the cursors are, we are having the 4 operations oriented to explicit cursor. First one is declaring the cursor. The cursor will be declared using the statement. It's using the keyword cursor. Cursor name is select. Select statements can be invoked based on our requirement. Then opening the cursor. The cursor will be opened using the keyword open along with the cursor name. This cursor, before using this statement, the cursor has to be invoked in the previous step. Then fetching the cursor. So here the fetch statement acts as a keyword which will display the cursor name into the record name. Then closing the cursor. Keyword to close the cursor is close along with the cursor name. Let's see an example for this explicit cursor. So here we are using the student table. A student table contains the name of the student, student ID, address of the student. So we are going to define an explicit cursor s underscore student, which will select the ID, name and address of the students. So here the cursor keyword is used. S student is a reserved word, then select statement. Now next one is opening the cursor using the open statement s underscore student. Then you are going to fetch the data from the student using the fetch keyword. So s student into s ID, s name and s address. These are all temporary variables. Exit when s underscore s not found. So here we are using the SID, S name and S address as the temporary variables which will define the data fetched from the cursor. Then it will return only one row at a time. Now we will see the output of this cursor statement processed. So these are all the data which are fetched from the student table. ID, name, address. ID, name, address. We are providing a blank space between the ID, name and the student address so that the output will be in an elegant look. So now we move on to the next way, the another way of creating a cursor. So using a for loop. A cursor that is explicit cursors can be created by using the above methods, that is creating the cursor using the cursor keyword, then opening the cursor using the open keyword, fetching the data row by row by the statement fetch, and closing the cursor using the keyword close. This is the first way of creating explicit cursor, which are programmer defined. The another way to create a explicit cursor is using the for loops. So the for loop for working with the cursor by giving the cursor name instead of the range limit in the for loop statement. This will make the for loop run from the cursor first record to the cursor last record. The for loop will perform all the declaration part, opening the cursor, then fetching the data from the cursor and closing the cursor by itself. So let's see the syntax of this cursor definition, which will be invoked using a for loop. So it starts with the declare statement. Cursor name is select, begin for I in cursor name, then set of loop statement. So now we will see an example. Here we are in the same data, the same database, that is student database, is used in this example also. Here we are creating the cursor using the for loop statement. So declare part cursor student underscore s is select name from the students. We are selecting the student name alone from the student database. So we begin for, it is a temporary variable, that is lv underscore s name in student name. So loop, we are trying to output the names row by row, it will be displayed. So we can see the output here. The cursor is created as student underscore s. Then we are using a loop variable, that is temporary variable lv underscore s underscore name. The above code prints the name of the student in each iteration of the for loop. So we are getting the output like this, that is statement processed. Then we are getting the outputs which are already available in the student table. So in this way the explicit cursor is created using the for loop. Then we move on to the next one, cursor life cycle. So a cursor has 5 steps, that is declaration part, opening part, then fetching the data, closing the cursor, and deallocation. Deallocation is erasing the cursor and making free space for the other resources. So a cursor has 5 life cycle. First one is declaration, in which a cursor is declared. Whereas cursor is opened, so already declared cursors can be opened using the open statement, that is keyword open along with the cursor name. So a cursor is opened to store the data from the result collection. Then fetching the data, so we are using the statement fetch followed by the cursor name. When a cursor is opened, rows can be fetched only one at a time or in a block to perform data manipulation. Once the data manipulation is over, we have to close the cursor using this keyword close. Then, and the last one is important one, that is cursor deallocation. That is, cursors can be deallocated to erase the description. So, and as well as to make a free space for the other resources to work on. So let's see the advantage of cursor. So the cursor makes the code a simplified one. So it will make a clarity regarding how the data manipulation commands will be used, as well as it will give a simplified look to the code. So the programs with embedded SQL utilize the optimizer. Programmer does not worry about the best way to retrieve data. So cursor make it simplified, and they will give a pointer to the data which are a result of the data manipulation statement. So program does not have to change even if the underlying structure does. Even though the structure of the database changes, there is no need to change the structure of the program when we are invoking using a cursor. Cursor definition only changes, not procedural. They are not defined as procedural. They can be defined as definitions. With that, we conclude cursor. Now we move on to the next concept, stored procedures in SQL. So we will know functions in Java, C++. Similarly, when it comes to database management system, we need stored procedures, that is a function like structure. So What is a stored procedure? A procedure in SQL is a reusable unit that encapsulates the specific business logic of an application. So an SQL procedure is called as a group of SQL statements and logics compiled and stored together to perform a specific task. So similar to Java, for functions in Java and C++, we are using a concept called procedures in SQL, data APL SQL, SQL. So what are all the key features of an SQL procedure? They are easy to implement. So because they only use the predefined commands that are available in the database system. So developing a SQL procedure is a easy task. Then supports three type of parameters. What are all they? Input, output, and as well as input and output. So they will allow to give input, they will produce output, they will allow both. So more reliable than equivalent external procedure. Instead of defining an external procedure, you can rely on a stored procedure when in terms of database management system. SQL procedures promote reusability and maintainability. It supports a simple and powerful conditions and error handling modules. Return a status value to a calling procedure or batch to indicate success or failure and the reason for the failure. So they, once a procedure is executed, it will it will indicate whether the procedure called is successfully executed, or if it is failed means it will also depict the reason for the failure. Now move on to the syntax of the procedure. The procedure will be created using the keyword create, or you can use replace statement to create an already existing procedure by altering the codes inside the procedure. That is similar to the save as statements. Create or replace procedure, these are all keywords. Then procedure name, then we have to give the parameter, that is either in, that is input, out, output, or both, in and out. Then type of the procedure. So is or as. If you are using create means you have to use is. If you are using replace means you have to use as. So then begin and declaration section, you will have the executable section and it has to be ended with the end keyword, and the last statement of a procedure must be a go. So we usually use return statements whenever you are using in Java or C++. Here we have to use go. Let's see, before going to the example of the procedure, we will discuss about the parameters in the syntax part. So syntax terminologies, that is parameters. The parameters, you know that they are the variables that hold the values of any valid SQL data types. Here we are using at important default parameters, that is in, out, and input, output. So when you are using in means which always receive the value from the calling program, it is a read-only variable inside the subprogram and its values cannot be changed inside the subprogram. Whereas out means it is used for getting the output from the subprograms. So we cannot input any values, or you cannot receive any values from the calling program. Whereas when we are using in and out means both the options are allowed. When a calling program gives some values means it will be considered as input value. If we are sending some values out from the procedure, it will be considered as outputs. So other terminologies, you know that procedure name must be the name of the procedure. It must be unique. There will be no repetitions. So or replace option will be used to modify the existing procedure. Then is or as clause, they set the context to execute the stored procedure. The difference is that keyword is used when the procedure is nested with some other blocks, whereas if the procedure is standalone means it will be used with as. Then code block, so declares the procedural statement that handle all processing statement within the stored procedure. The content of the code block depends on the rules and procedure language used by the database. These are all the important terminologies regarding the syntax of a procedure. Now we will see an example. Here we are creating a welcome message procedure which will take only one parameter, that is a character parameter, that is varchar2. It will take para1 as the input and it will depicts an output, dbms output, put line hello world along with the parameter name. So once a procedure is created means you have to use execute keyword to run the procedure. So the execute statement will execute the procedure. So calling the name of the procedure from the SQL block. So now see how we get the output for this procedure. So execute is the statement to run the procedure. Welcome message is the welcome underscore MSG is the name of the procedure. The parameter we are passing is welcome to Sri Krishna Swami College. So the output will be hello world, welcome to Sri Krishna Swami College. The output will look like this. The procedure is executed and the message is printed out as hello world Sri Krishna Swami College dot welcome to Sri Krishna Swami College. So here we are having another example which will work on the previous one is a simple example which will take one parameter as an input and it will give some output. So now we are going to create a procedure how it will retrieve the data from the employee table. So let us consider an employee table with the employee name, first name, last name and department details. Here we are creating an employee table where we are employee ID and employee names will be displayed. So employee ID is an integer variable, that is an input parameter, whereas employee name, that is a character variable, that will be an output parameter. So as begin, select at employee name is equal to first name plus last name from employee table where employee ID is equal to the employee ID. Whenever we are depicting or prefixing with an at symbol means it will represent a parameter which is passed to the procedure. Here the employee ID is the parameter which is passed to this procedure. Here we are going to retrieve the name of the employee. So this example create an SQL procedure which will return an employee name when the employee ID is given as an input parameter to the stored procedure. Now we will look at the output of this procedure. So here we are declaring employee name as a varchar. So execute get student name 01 at employee name. Select employee name. The above procedure on giving employee ID as the input returns the name of that particular employee. Suppose if we have an output parameter, then we first need to declare the variable to collect the output parameter. Advantages of using the procedures. So to hide direct SQL queries from the code and also to improve the performance of database operation, that is especially the DML operations, we are using the procedures. So they will reduce the amount of information sent to the database server. It can become a more important benefit when the bandwidth of the network is less. Enables the reusability of a code. Whenever we are defining the procedures with minor or major change, we can reuse the code again and again. Enhancing the security, since you can grant permission to the user for executing the stored procedure instead of giving permissions on the table used in the stored procedure. You can restrict the authentication regarding the database tables by giving access to the stored procedure. Here the stored procedures will not update the data. They are used to retrieve the data from the tables. Then supported nested procedure calls to other SQL procedures or procedures implemented in another language. There is a flexibility that the SQL procedures can be invoked in other languages also. So with that we conclude cursors and procedures. Thank you.